Welcome to the Organizational Transformation Kung Fu Podcast with your hosts, Sandi and Jennifer Long.
So welcome to our newest episode of the Organizational Transformation Kung Fu Podcast. I'm Sandi and I'm coming to you from Satori Consulting in Toronto, Canada. And I'm here with my friend and podcast co-host, Jen Long from Management Possible in Denver, Colorado. We chose to name our podcast OT Kung Fu because, like the art of Kung Fu, organizational and personal change takes time, practice, and patience for it really to take root. And that's really what our podcast is about. How do we make change happen within organizations and for people personally? So on that note, we're thrilled to have a very special guest with us here today who's going to share his thoughts on owning your career. This is a hot topic now, especially through the pandemic, where many people have stopped to reflect on where they are and where they want to be. As we return to work, the past year and a half has radically changed how we view ourselves as professionals and how we define our work in our places of work. So with that, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Andy Storch. Andy is a consultant, coach, speaker, facilitator, connector, and author. And he is the host of two podcasts, including the Talent Development Hot Seat and the Andy Storch Show. Today, we're going to dig into Andy's new book called Own Your Career and Own Your Life. Welcome, Andy, to our show.
Thank you so much, Sandi. Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for having me on. I see Jen's got her copy over there, and I can't wait to get a copy of your book coming out soon, Jen. Sandi's got her copy as well. Thank you so much for having me
Publication
on.
date coming imminently.
Yeah,
I'm excited. I'm excited for both. This is great.
Exactly. Well, we're excited to have you here on the show because your book is an interesting topic for right now, because Sandi and I did the last episode on the hybrid workplace and everybody and where they want to work and what they're doing in their lives. And so you're an interesting dovetail into the personal perspective, right? So Andy's book is Own Your Career, Own Your Life, Stop Drifting and Take Control of Your Future. Mm-hmm. And it came out last year?
2020. November 2020, I published it. Yeah. So
it's a pandemic book.
Fresh. It's fresh.
Still new.
Press.
Still new. That's right.
He's got content in there that actually references the pandemic. That's how fresh it is.
I was in the middle of writing it in early 2020 when the pandemic hit. And, funny enough, I've been known, sort of one of the things I'm known for is networking. I'm very blessed to have a very big network. I've been active in going out to conferences and events and things like that and networking all over the place. And so people always ask me, put something out on that. And I was sitting there writing this book about the importance of networking, how you need to go to conferences and networking, and then COVID hit and it was like, we can't do that anymore. So let me go ahead and change this and talk about virtual summits and Zoom and calls. So luckily I had plenty of time to adjust when the pandemic hit.
Excellent.
Right? Pivot. It's the agile pivot that we all have to do.
Indeed.
Personal transformation right there on the spot. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Good. So the reason I think this is timely is we have what's called the Great Resignation happening, right? Is there are so many jobs out there for the taking right now and nobody wants them and people are taking their jobs and shoving them. And so I think it's an interesting time for this book. So I want you to talk a little bit about what you're seeing, maybe why it's being called the Great Resignation, and what's going on for people in your view, who are quitting, changing, and not going back to work.
Yeah, the Great Resignation, or I've heard some people call it the turnover tsunami. This stuff is happening. I've had a lot of these conversations with organizations that are concerned, with people who are looking around or who are leaving. And the fact of the matter is, there has never been a better time to own your career, and figure out what you want to do and take action on that. I think a lot of people, as you've probably seen, you're very familiar with this phenomenon, throughout COVID, a lot of people were fearful about their jobs. They didn't feel like they had options to move around and do different things. And now, as we're recording this, we're in September 2021. Certainly there are still many concerns, still not a lot of live big events happening. And yet the economy is booming. Companies are doing really well. Opportunities are all over the place. And companies more than ever are open to people working remotely, living where they want, right? So where you felt like if you worked in tech, you always had to be in the Bay Area where it was really expensive. Now you see a lot of people moving to Oregon and Lake Tahoe and Idaho and just kind of living where they want to live. And that creates more opportunities. And people are saying, hey, if I don't like this job, then I don't really need to stay here, right? Or more importantly, I don't like my manager. I don't really need to stay here. There are so many other opportunities. My friend told me their company is hiring. This other company is hiring. And as I wrote in my book, even during COVID, and I get some feedback, there were people that were, I think, felt challenged by this, that it has never been easier to go find another job than it has been today, right? I mean, 20 years ago, when we were applying for jobs, you were submitting paper resumes. They might have a website for you to submit to. Maybe I actually found a job once on Craigslist back in 2004, something like that. But now, I mean, with social media, you go on LinkedIn and see somebody has an opening, you could message them and you could be working there 2 days later, right? The opportunities are everywhere. And so even if you're in an industry that's challenged, there are so many opportunities, and I think people are ready and excited to take advantage of that. And therefore, the companies that are not providing great opportunities for growth for their people are really going to struggle. And why I mentioned growth is because when you look at what people really care about, that has started to shift over time, shifted by generation. And you look at the younger millennials, especially, and Gen Z that's coming into the workforce. The number one thing that people care about is, are there opportunities for career growth? Can I grow in my career? Are you going to be investing in me, or am I just getting a paycheck? Right. And right behind that is, do you believe in DEI? Do you have an inclusive culture? Things like that. Young people really care about these things. And if you're not investing in your people, you're not providing those opportunities, it becomes a lot more challenging. And then also on the other side, for employees, for people who are looking for new jobs, like I said before, there's never been a better time to own your career. That means figure out what you really want to do and then go look for those opportunities, because they are out there and a lot of companies are hiring. And so there's almost no excuse at this point to not go do the thing that you want to do.
Mm-hmm. There's so many things that you said in that, and one of the things that resonated and that Jen and I have talked about before is that people tend to leave managers, not organizations. And
Absolutely.
so having that clear communication is going to be really critical, ensuring that people are having those conversations around career. But I think, as you're talking about, there's never been a better time. It takes courage to make these moves, right? And there's fear around that. There's fear of failure. What if I craft my own career path, but maybe I'm an imposter when I get there, right? And so, what words of wisdom do you have around diving into that courage to make moves and craft your own career?
Oh my God, I love this subject so much because it does impact so many people. Just yesterday, a friend of mine posted in a forum in a community we're in. He said, I just found this amazing job opportunity. I've interviewed for it. It seems like a great fit. And it's really kind of the job of my dreams, but I can't get myself past the limiting belief that I just don't think I'm worthy of this job, that I can't be a great manager. I can't do this very well. And it's like, wow, mind blown, right? So many people hold themselves back. It's not the economy. It's not the hiring managers. It's not other people that are holding them back. A lot of people out there are holding themselves back because of fear or limiting beliefs, or whatever it may be, thinking I just can't do it. And so there's a few things I go to. Number one, if you're looking at an opportunity and you're thinking, wow, this would be really cool, but I'm afraid that if I try it, I'm going to fail. It's not going to work out. Or I'm afraid that I'm going to fail and people are going to look poorly at me and I'm going to have to go back. Or what if I'm not a good fit? The first question I ask usually is like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, seriously, what is the worst that you apply for this job, you don't get it, or you get the job and it doesn't work out and they're like, hey, sorry, this isn't a good fit. Like, yeah, that's a bad feeling, but you're probably not going to be out on the streets. You're still going to be able to find another job and feed your family. Number two is, I always ask, what would my future self want me to do? So I am, we recorded this, I'm 41 years old. I consult my 50-year-old self, my 70-year-old self, my 90-year-old self. Looking back on my life, what would I have wanted me to do? Would I want me to play it safe or go for the thing that I think would make my life better and more fulfilling? And the answer is obvious. I want to go out for that thing. I want to try to do all the things I can do. I want to fulfill my true potential. I'll share a quote later on that relates to this. And then the third thing I'll say is that it does take courage, right? We all have fear. If you look at most of the people that you admire who have achieved big things, chances are along the way, they did a lot of things that were scary. They tried new things. They're like, I don't know if this is going to work out, right? But when you truly adopt a growth mindset, and I'm a big fan of growth mindset, as I'm sure both of you are as well, which comes from the famous book Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck at Stanford. I have a whole chapter dedicated to it in my book. I truly believe that when you have a growth mindset, there is no such thing as failure. There is only learning and growth. And that when you really believe that, and I've like brainwashed myself to truly believe that, that I try new things all the time because I'm like, oh, what's the worst that can happen? Like I'll learn something new, right? And this fear, I think one of the biggest fears we have is that we're going to try something and fail. And it's not that we're going to fail and go back to zero. It's that other people are going to laugh at us, right? Other people are going to watch us and go, oh, hey, Jen, I saw that you decided to publish that book and it didn't sell as many copies as you wanted it to. Like, ha ha. Right. But when does that ever happen? Like, first of all, only surround yourself with people who root for you. Second of all, everybody is focused on themselves. They're not focused on you. They don't really care what's going on. I mean, hopefully they're supporting you,
Well,
right?
and
But
this,
no
this
one's
goes
sitting
to
around.
that self-awareness, right? Is
Yeah.
the worst thing that could ever happen is that you go through this, you fail, and you don't self-reflect. That
Right.
you don't really take
Yes.
that lesson in and go, holy cow,
Yep.
I just learned a lot of things about myself in this experience, as opposed to the story you tell yourself, right? And I find that when I'm coaching a lot of people who live in this, deer in headlights moment of I can't do it, I screwed up and now I can't, is like, let's divorce the story you're telling yourself from the actual facts, because
Yes.
I think that personal narrative and how you respond is as much responsible for either your ability to learn or the
Mhm.
fact that you shut down and don't do it anymore.
Yeah, and if you want help with that, it can be really helpful to find a mentor or a coach. I know you're really big on this, right? Having a coach can help
Yes.
you, or friends who are supportive, because they probably see opportunities and skills in you that you don't see for yourself, right? They can say, yes, you should go for that. Yes, you're qualified. Yes, you need to do it. You need to give it a shot. Stop talking yourself out of it, right? And when you have that opportunity, and let me just tell you a quick personal story because I've been through this as well. Last year in 2020. Going into that year, my whole business was selling and running in-person training programs. That was my whole business, right? I ran a conference in January 2020 that was sold out, a big success. Everything got completely shut down by COVID. All my clients went away. My income was about to dry up, and I took a couple of days to cry about it, right? And then I said, okay, what can I do? I'm going to pivot. And I actually left the organization I was with to go out on my own completely, started a whole new business, started a membership community. And luckily, I had a coach and a mastermind group around me really rooting for me and supporting me. And I was able to build that up. And 2020 was my best year ever from an income standpoint. And 2021 is trending even better because of all the stuff that I've built and because I keep trying new things that I've never done before, even though they are kind of scary. But, to your point, and like the worst can happen is I maybe it doesn't work out and I don't learn anything, but I'm going to learn something from it.
Yeah. And not to be concerned about the people that are going to be in judgment anyway, right? So I had that conversation this morning, that Brene Brown, who's in your 1-inch square, that's really who it matters, right? And so don't worry about the other peripheral people around you and what they think.
The ego damage, the ego gets in the way all the time.
Yeah.
Totally.
Right? So let me drive you into the title just for a minute, right? So ownership is a big and a cool thing, and it's one of obviously my favorite subjects. And so give us a little backstory on the big idea behind the book and why you gave it the title you did. I want to talk a little bit about your why.
Yeah. Well, I've been working in corporate consulting for over 10 years now. I've worked with a lot of companies and leaders like you. And I've learned a lot about what makes leaders and companies successful. I also observed a lot of people really drifting in their careers, operating in reaction mode, waiting for others to tell them what to do, and frankly, not very fulfilled or happy. And I have totally been there myself. A lot of this is based on my own personal experience and my own transformation and what I've gone through. And I wanted to create something, a roadmap for people who really want that fulfillment in their career. And they can treat their career like it's a business. Maybe they don't want to run their own business, but they want to have a career that's fulfilling. And if you treat your career like it's a business where you are fully responsible for everything, it doesn't matter what happens, right? Like I mentioned that my business got shut down because of COVID. I could sit around and complain all day, but that's not going to change anything, right? I've got to take responsibility. I've got to take ownership of that situation and figure out where to go next. And what I see is a lot of people drifting, operating in reaction mode, really being victims, right, of their career, of their life, thinking that, life happens to them and just waiting for the next thing to happen. And I wanted to create a guide to really help people take ownership of their career, take full responsibility, and see everything in life as a blessing, as an opportunity, rather than some terrible thing that we have to go through. And knowing that everybody's situation is different, but I know the transformation I've been through. I've seen what other people have gone through, and I just know there's so much opportunity out there when you take this ownership mindset and you do the work to prepare for the future and set yourself up for future success.
So you've mentioned a couple of different topics in that. One is drifting. So how do people recognize when they're drifting, right? So what's kind of the telltale signs? And then if they are falling into that victim mentality, how does it become obvious to them? How do they get it? How do they pinpoint that?
How do I know I'm a victim?
How do I know? Yeah. So there's a couple things there. One is the victim mentality. And if you have the victim mentality, you're doing a lot of complaining. You're worrying about what other people are doing instead of yourself, really getting distracted by a lot of things that are outside of your control. A good example is politics, right? It's so easy to just get sucked into cable news and follow what's going on with politics and be really angry if at the other side that's not your side and the decisions they're making. But all of those things are outside of your control. It's a lot more productive, I feel, to focus on things that are in your control. So you can't control politics, the global economy, pandemics. You can't control the leadership team at your company, your boss, your spouse, even your kids, right? You can't really control them. At least I can't control mine.
The illusion that we have.
Yeah, the illusion. I can tell my kids what to do, but they often don't listen to me. But you can control yourself and how you show up and how you interact with people and how you react to certain situations. And when you start to become really intentional about how you're spending your time, how you're showing up with people, how you're reacting to situations, that's when you're really living more intentionally and taking ownership. And the way you know you're drifting, and I've been drifting many times in my career, and the idea of drifting came from a book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill that was written back in the 1930s. And Napoleon Hill was best known for the book Think and Grow Rich, which was published, I think, 1937. It's the most successful personal development book of all time. He also wrote a subsequent book called Outwitting the Devil that his wife deemed too controversial and made him promise never to publish it. And he never did. Not in his lifetime, not in his children's lifetime, but it eventually got published. I forget the year, 2005, I think. And I'm glad it did, because it's a fantastic read. And he talks about, it's a fictional conversation between him and the devil, and how the devil takes hold of people's minds and causes them to really drift. And this idea of drifting is basically you're operating in reaction mode. You're doing all the things that you think society wants you to do instead of being intentional with how you live your life. Probably involves a lot of smoking, drinking, watching sports, watching that, TV.
Pandemic time.
Right, pandemic time. And I always caveat this, that like, you get to live your life however you want. I have no judgment for anyone and how they live their life. But if you are spending 3 hours a day binge watching Netflix, and you're also saying, I'd love to get a promotion or get in better shape or achieve this goal, I just don't feel like I have time, that's when you might be drifting, and you need to just kind of take stock of how and where you're spending your time and think about how you can maybe adjust that so that you're spending your time in the right places, where you have real goals for your career and your life, and you have a plan for how you're going to achieve those. And you think about how you're spending your time. You're cognizant of how you're spending your time and how that supports you in your goal versus, hey, I had a great productive day and I deserve to relax right now and watch an hour of Netflix. That's totally fine. But if it's like consuming your life, then it's not very productive.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes people miss it because it's a low grade, it's like a low grade fever, right? It's this malaise and this feeling of dissatisfaction that sometimes you feel like I can't really put my finger on it. And those, to me, I think are the kind of the interesting little red flags that should be popping up. Like,
Mhm.
and the other thing is I think psychologically people will talk about that, they will recognize that, and will do absolutely nothing about it.
Mhm.
And they're so some of that transformational of they know it, right? Ownership is an attractive thing, being intentional is an attractive thing, but yet I choose not to do it. I actively don't do the things I could be doing, and I'm actively not doing other things.
Yeah. Or you don't think you can.
Right. And I
For
think
many
part of that is
reasons.
is
Yeah.
people have to the the self-reflection part of this ownership piece, I think, also has to do with really being willing to look at what you're afraid of ultimately, because you're
Mhm.
gonna engage in behaviors that make you feel safe.
Mhm.
If you're stuck, if you're
Mhm.
in drift, I think is also a place of safety.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Because, and it might be what you grew up doing, what all your friends are doing. It has a lot to do with your peers and who you surround yourself with, right? Like I grew up watching a lot of sports. My father got me into sports. And if you look back at my life in my 20s, I was watching sports all the time. I was a huge baseball fan, football fan. And I look back on that time and I'm like, what did that get me? Like nothing, right? But it was the acceptable thing. A man in your 20s, like all your friends are watching sports too. So I think it's we got to recognize that even if we feel like, oh, we're doing something that everybody else is doing, is that really serving me? And take stock of your life and your goals and how you're spending your time. And are you happy with that? And if not, do you need to make some changes? And involved in those changes might be the people you surround yourself with as well, right? Are you surrounding yourself with people? Because if you want to get out of that rut, and COVID was a huge rut for a lot of people, right? We're in lockdown. There's a lot of things you can do. We're not, most of us are not in lockdown anymore, but there's still restrictions. There's still anxiety. I know a lot of people have struggled. And I think one of the most important things you can do is surround yourself with other people who are ambitious and optimistic and intentional and spending their time doing cool things, versus, just drinking or drowning their sorrows or whatever it may be. Right. And that, when I say surround yourself, it doesn't have to be physically, right? You may not find people locally, or maybe you're not comfortable getting together with people in person, but there's a lot of great online communities out there. I've made great friends through LinkedIn and introductions. I mean, you and I, like we're talking now. There's just tons of opportunities out there if you go looking for that right thing versus getting sucked into the other stuff.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so when we read your book, we loved the fact that you had dedicated an entire chapter for asking for help. So it's kind of what you're
Mm.
you're suggesting that people do, so that they can start, getting the help to set their career in motion. So, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
So I knew you were going to ask this question, and I was thinking about it. And
It's the question.
this was the hardest question for me to answer. And I'll tell you, the reason is I've been very lucky to get a lot of great coaching and surround myself with a lot of really fantastic people over the years. And I was having a hard time pinpointing one piece of advice. And then I remembered something someone told me that has really kind of guided me. And it goes all the way back to that question that you asked about, hey, if you're afraid of making that move, of following your dreams, um, you know, and you want to develop more of this growth mindset and go for stuff, like how do you get yourself to do that? And I mentioned, consulting your older self and asking them what they want to do. Well, I heard this quote from my friend Dominic Cortuccio, who I quoted in my book. And he said that the definition of hell is getting to the end of your life and meeting the person that you could have become.
Oh, that makes me so uncomfortable.
And it
Mm,
just gives me goosebumps every time. And I remember it all the time that, I'm on this mission to get the most out of life, to follow my dreams, to impact as many people as possible. And my biggest fear is getting to the end and realizing like, oh, I could have done more. Right. And if you've ever checked out that book, The Five Regrets of the Dying, the woman in Australia that interviewed all these people on their deathbed, the number one regret people say was, I regret that I did not live a life true to myself. Right.
yeah.
Mm.
So I remember these things and think, okay, what do I really want to do? And I make plenty of mistakes. I'm not perfect. I'm not always spending my time in the right places, and I'm getting pulled in different directions and things like that too. But I go back to that as guidance to me, that like, if I have different options, different ways to spend my time, different things to work on, what do I truly want to go after? If there's something big that I'm afraid of, what am I going to regret not doing? And I think about that definition
Exactly.
of
And
health.
so this brings me to this question that came up for me when I was reading. So another big thing that people struggle with and that we as coaches work with a lot is vision, right? And we work with
Mm.
it sort of in that business context, getting leaders to inspire others on the idea of a better tomorrow and what that is. And you're asking people to do it for themselves. So can you talk a little bit about what you typically get when you're working with people on this and what some tips are for developing this with yourself?
Yeah, I'm sure that you have probably more advice on this than I do. So I hope you do a whole episode on this for your podcast, right? But
Right? Vision.
what I've noticed, in talking about this with people is that, and I'm sure you have as well, most people do not take the time to reflect, to really sit down and think about their life and who they are and where they want to be, right? That means no distractions, take out a notebook, think about, who am I? What do I like about what I'm doing right now? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Like, honestly, what am I really good at? What do I not good at? What do I enjoy? What do I not enjoy? Where do I want to go with my career? What's my ideal vision for my career for 5 or 10 years from now? And taking all the fear and limiting beliefs out of it, what would I truly want to do? And then if I really wanted to get there, what would I need to do to accomplish that? Make a real plan and say, okay, yeah, I work in finance right now. It's because of what I studied, and I've got many years of finance, and so I feel like I should be here. But I really love people, and I'd love to try working in HR. I'd love to be in HR in the next 5 years. I think there's a lot of people out there with thoughts like that. So then, can you sit down and say, well, what is it about that attracts me? And then what could I do to get there? Could I start networking with certain people? Do I need any designations or certifications? Could I take some online classes? What are the steps that I can start taking to get me there? And I think once people have that clarity of where they want to go, it starts making decisions a lot easier when opportunities come up, so that, 6 months later, you start going down that road and your boss comes to you and says, hey, you've been doing a great job. We want to promote you to director of finance. And it's more money, but you're going to be working 60, 70 hours a week, and you're not going to have time to pursue this other thing. When you're really clear on the vision that, like, you know what, that's cool, but I really want to get into HR, you can have the courage to turn that down and go do something else. But a lot of people have a hard time with that because they just don't really know where they want to go.
Well, right. And I want to throw in there too, because I vibe on this stuff because I kind of live in that bigger macro
Mhm.
seeing around the corners and what tomorrow and the potential, right? And that's probably what makes us good at coaching, right, Sandy? Is we're cool with potential and how to harness that and how to get to that. But I think let me speak on behalf of the practical people who are like, well, how does that make me feel secure in my income? And the
Mm.
reality of what job shifts and the expectation, right? So a long time ago, you were in a career path and you did one thing and you worked for one company your whole life,
Mhm.
and that's changed. And now it's almost your ability to be flexible and to be in different kinds of careers in radically different industries or whatever. Those apertures have gotten very wide.
Yeah.
But with that comes a lot of insecurity around income, stability, growing a root. So talk a little bit about that and how you address that or how you think about that in terms of taking on this level of ownership around your career.
Well, you're right about that, and you mentioned the insecurity about income and title, and the big thing you didn't mention was perception, right? What do other people think of me with what I'm doing? I need to move up because I want other people's respect and admiration, or my parents expect certain things from me. Look, there's a lot of people out there who are caught in that wheel of comparison, and I need to set goals because other people set goals that they want to be CEO one day. I'm trying to do the same thing, right? Or this is what's expected of me, so I need to go do that. And I want this to be a wake-up call that when you own your career, you set a vision and goals based on what you want to do and who you are, right? And so when you set that big vision and connect to a purpose, it might be that you want to be CEO one day, which is what I thought maybe a long time ago. Or it might be that you just want to feel like you're adding value, you're appreciated, and you're home for dinner with your family every single night. And that fills you up. And that is what you want. That's awesome. Like, that is for you, right? It doesn't have to be this grand vision or this big thing. And similarly with the money, Like, yeah, we all want to make more money, right? But what if there are trade-offs that come with that? What if I told you that you could be a vice president and you could make $150,000 a year or 250,000, whatever it is, and that would probably require you to work 75 hours a week, take a bunch of trips, you wouldn't be home that much with your family, or whatever the trade-offs are. Or B, you're in a manager role, you like what you do, you're making $80,000 a year, and you're home for dinner with your family every night, right? What would you choose if that was the situation? And, that's not always black and white. But the point is that you get to choose what's right for you. And I want people to really think about living their life for them and not for anybody else. So, I have a chapter in the book about comparison because it holds so many people back, right? It's a problem for a lot of people. We look at what other people are doing. Our neighbor has a nicer car or a nicer house. Like, I want that, right? I fall victim to that all the time. And I have to remind myself, like, yeah, but they're doing a job I wouldn't want to do, right? Like, yeah, it's great they make a lot of money, but I wouldn't want to do
It's
their
a
job.
guaranteed recipe for how to feel bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. But as we sit here, we're all self-employed, right? So we've all taken the leap at some
Yes.
point. I don't know, Jen, did you ever work for an organization? Have you always been self-employed?
Mostly earlier in my career, right? When I
Okay.
was doing restaurant work and
Yeah, okay.
other
Okay.
stuff like that, I was employed by other people, and I learned very
It's not,
quickly.
and it sounds great to say, like, oh, well, you run your own business, you can do whatever you want. Like, okay, well, come on over. Do you want to take on the risk that's
You can work
involved in,
twice
like,
as hard for half
not
as much.
not
Well, that's
knowing,
right.
yeah,
But
not
personal
knowing how much.
satisfaction along the way.
Yeah, but
Um,
that's another, like, I'm getting to a point where I'm now making more than I did when I was an employee of a company. For a while, I was not, and I would remind myself all the time that I will gladly make less money to have the business that I want and live the life that I want, and I'm totally fine with that. So I think there's,
Yeah.
we got to remember sometimes there's trade-offs, and
Well, and you talk
again,
about values, right? And values
yeah.
are all about what's important, right? What's important, is it more important to have the freedom and autonomy than it is? I mean, I'll take money problems all day long over health or
100%.
Oh, for
But
sure.
some
For
people don't
sure.
want that, right? So another reason I wrote my book is I got into the entrepreneur space and I started hearing this refrain. People would say, if you don't like your job, you need to quit the 9 to 5 and start your own business, right? I'm sure you've
Mhm.
heard that before.
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's great. That worked for me. But I've talked to many clients who are like, I don't know how you do what you do. I would never
Mhm.
want to run my own business. I want to be part of a company. I want to be part of a team. I like the collaboration. I like the guaranteed salary and health insurance, whatever it may be. Like, that's totally cool. Do you just make a plan, and so that you're working in a job and a career that helps, that keeps you fulfilled.
Yeah, I like this idea of the plan and kind of I'm visualizing more of a roadmap where you can see some if I go left, this could happen. If I go right, this could happen, and then kind of thinking through that because I think a lot of the times when we're making these big decisions, you just have to be able to think through consequences and see where it aligns with you. So, what do you think the hardest part is for people um, when they're going down this roadmap? So they've got it; it's pretty, it's lovely, and where do they fall off the rails?
Mm. It goes back to fear. I think the hardest part is being honest with yourself,
Mm.
and then taking those steps to do the things that you want to do, because it probably involves doing things that are uncomfortable, like taking on a new job that maybe you haven't done before, or having a conversation with your manager where you bring up the fact that, this job is great right now, but I'd like to do something else. And can you support me in that? That's scary. And I've gone and done those things, and you risk rejection, right? Which is one of the three biggest fears: rejection, failure, and judgment. And I faced that. In my career earlier on, I was doing a job I didn't really like that much, and I went to my boss and I said, I think that we would both be better suited if I went and did this other thing over here. It would fit my strengths and it would benefit the company. And he responded, no, I don't want you to do that. Get back to work and doing the thing that I asked you to do. And that was unfortunate because there were a lot of opportunities there, but it was a wake up call for me. And I left that company and found a better opportunity. But had he said yes, I might still be at that company today, right? I mean, who knows?
Right, exactly.
It works out either way.
Well, which leads me to this question, which is your book is looking at the individual, right? So, and them examining their career life. But what do you think companies could do to do a better job at helping employees to own their own careers within their own walls, right? Because I think the company has an obligation. And I know that HRNA struggles with succession planning and
Mhm.
pathway mapping and that kind of thing. So, in your view, based on the work you've done and the coaching you do with people in this regard, what could companies be doing better?
Two things. Number one, give people opportunities, development, learning opportunities, the ability to move up, to learn, to try different things. Number two, most importantly, coach your leaders on how to have career conversations with people to help support them in their careers. And I'm big on this. I know a lot of companies are thinking about this. Some do it, some don't. But I strongly believe, I know you've been in leadership coaching for a long time. I strongly believe that the number one job of a leader is to enable the people around them to get better, to do their job and to improve in their own careers. Right. And if you take that seriously as a leader, then you're having that conversation, you're coaching your people, you're supporting them. A lot of managers don't know how to have that conversation. They're not initiating it. That's not happening. People are afraid to talk to their managers and have that conversation. They don't feel supported. And then they get frustrated and they're like, well, I'm not growing in my career and my manager hasn't given me any opportunities. So guess what? I'm going to go look for another job. And it's unfortunate because I think turnover, attrition could be a lot lower if managers were having those real supportive managerial conversations, but they don't know how to do it because companies are not giving them the support to show them how to do it, right? They do the age-old thing, which is you're a really good programmer or salesperson, so we're going to make you a manager now. No training, go out and do it. And then the manager doesn't know how to coach. And so people are not getting the coaching they want. They get frustrated and they leave.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Seems to be happening all around.
Everywhere. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also feel like leaders sometimes feel like, God, that's a Pandora's box. If I open that up, then I have to have some kind of answer for them.
Yeah.
It's tough, but all the more reason if you are the person on the other end and you're looking to move up and you want to get guidance from your manager to go initiate that conversation, because a lot of managers don't know what to say or how to start the conversation. But when you come and say, hello, manager, I really like my job right now. I like what we're doing, but I have this thing that I really want to do longer term in my career. Could you support me? Could you give me feedback? That makes it a lot easier for the manager to say, oh yeah, I would love to help you. I just didn't know you wanted to do that.
Well, right. And if you're in a large organization where you've got some differentiation and
Yes.
you know, part of the pathway is how much broader knowledge can you get around the organization in different areas. If they don't know you're interested in doing it, how would they ever know to put your name in the hat when the opportunity comes?
That's right. They can help support you. And the best organizations are really pushing that. In fact, in a couple of days later this week, I've got a speaking engagement with a tech company called NetApp, and I'll mention them because they're doing great things. They're creating a new talent marketplace, and they're encouraging their managers to have these conversations and help their people find roles within the company that really fit their strengths and try different things. I think it's phenomenal.
It's fantastic. It's really, it's like a breath of fresh air when you hear companies that are actually doing that rather than staying to the rigor of this is how we've always done it and this is how people progress.
Yep.
Right? And not playing to people's strengths.
There's a lot of people that do a like job rotation kind of mentality, right? Where they're going to move you through some things, but that's, you know, I do the job rotation because that's a box I need to tick. I don't do the job rotation because I actually want to learn how to do this other job.
Yeah.
Which gives you a lot of weird results, right? Because people are just there they're phoning it in.
Yeah. But you know, as the economy changes, and I think we move towards more of a project-based, a gig economy, there's going to be a lot more project-based work. You're going to be trying and doing different things. You have multiple careers. Companies are trying to influence, inspire their people to treat their career more like a jungle gym than a ladder, right? I'm hearing that term a lot from clients of mine. And so I think we as individuals going in the workplace can say, okay, I may not move up directly, senior manager, director, or whatever the old career path is. Maybe it could be beneficial to move around and get experience doing different things because that will benefit me more long-term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And please don't judge me if I land on a rung that I love and don't want to let go of.
Yeah.
Totally.
But I didn't even know I loved.
Money.
So, that brings me to talk about personal brand, because you talk about that in your book, and lots of people talk about rebranding, and sometimes understanding your brand can highlight some of those areas where you might excel in an organization where people may not see you in that light otherwise. So why have you included personal brand as a concept in your book?
Well, personal brand, first of all, personal professional brand is nothing more than your reputation. It's what people think about you, say about you, especially when you're not in the room. And as I was in the entrepreneurial world, I heard lots of people talking about building your personal brand and your personal brand business. And I didn't hear many people talking about it in the corporate space. And yet, I think it's incredibly important. And we were just talking about where the economy is going, gig economy, project-based work. You think about it, two people applying to run a project or even a job, right? You've got Jonathan, who is highly experienced, highly skilled, but he is a little bit gruff. He's stubborn. He's not very easy to work with. He doesn't collaborate well. And then you've got Jennifer, who is not as experienced, right? But she's eager. She's collaborative. She's fun to work with. Everybody gets along with her. Like, who are you going to hire for that job, right? You're obviously you're going to hire Jen.
I'd hire Jen.
Right. Maybe not in every situation, if it's a surgeon or something, you want the gruff, most experienced right person. But in most situations, people are going to hire Jen. And why? It's not because she has more experience or skills. It's because she has a better brand. She has a better reputation. And that really matters. And I mentioned the brand being what people think about you and maybe what they say about you when you're not in the room. Well, when you're going up for a promotion or you're applying for a new job and the hiring managers have that conversation about whether they should hire you or not, guess what? You're not in the room. You're not there. You can't influence what they think about you. That's already done through how you showed up. So how do you influence your brand? You do it by how you show up in the workplace, how well you collaborate with people, the extra projects you take on. And then you can do it in the online world too, like showing up on LinkedIn, social media. Do you interact with people? Do you post content? Do you comment on other people's content? There's a lot of opportunities out there. And I think that brand absolutely matters when people are thinking about hiring or promoting.
Absolutely.
Hands down. Hands down. Excellent. So, because I do have a bias for action, other than buying your book, which everybody absolutely should, if you're in that career space of what do I, if when we talked about drift, you said, that sounds like me, definitely take a look at this book. So after buying the book, what are some other steps that podcast listeners can take to really kind of take advantage of the timeliness of the job opportunities and stepping into this ownership around a career and a life?
Well, first of all, in addition to getting the book, which is available on Amazon, it's out there now. There's also a companion journal on there. I've got some free bonus resources that you can go grab right now, including the top 5 most common mistakes that people make in their careers and the 5 steps to owning your career. You can get those by going to my website, ownyourcareerownyourlife.com/bonus. And you can get all of those there. So in addition to getting the book, getting the bonus resources, I would go back to what we talked about, which is the thing that most people don't take time to do, which is to sit down with a journal, whether it's my companion journal or any blank journal, right? And write down, what do you want your career to look like in 5 years? And what are your goals? What's your plan to achieve this? Or write down some SMART goals, specific, measurable, actionable, relative, time bound. So I want to get a promotion in 6 months by taking on 2 extra projects and getting weekly feedback from my manager. That's really specific, something you can measure progress against. Figure out what that goal or those goals are, and then go get help. You mentioned there's a whole chapter dedicated to asking for help. We are not meant to do things on our own. Humans are social creatures, right? There's no, you hear about the self-made leader, millionaire, whatever. Like it rarely happens, right? So go get some help. Talk to your manager. Find a mentor. Talk to your friends who are supportive. Hire a coach, right? Whether it's a career coach or a leadership coach, and get some help, because they're going to help you get there faster. And you'll be really glad that you put that down. But once you have that vision, just make sure that you make a really concrete plan, because a goal without a plan, I have learned, is really just a wish.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Great way to end it. So Andy Storch, Own Your Career, Own Your Life. Thank you so much for spending time with Jen and I today and sharing your thoughts on owning your career. I think it's really helpful. Book is available on Amazon.
That's right. Want to learn more about Andy, you can find him at andystorch.com.
Absolutely. And his podcasts. Absolutely. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jen and Sandy, for having me on. I am just so appreciative. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Until next time, leave us some comments. Tell us what you're thinking, and go out, get yourself a good read, get your career together.
Thank you for listening, and please visit Sandy's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI consultinginc.ca, and Jen's website at managementpossible.com. Thanks again.